I remember I think I was going to go visit you in Green or Miss Morini last year in like March. And I was like, oh, I'll wait till Kazu gets back, whatever. And then it's just like, boom. I never saw you guys until those couple of weeks ago. But yeah, tell me about how everything's been with you. And I'm just fascinated by the whole thing of the teaching situation over Zoom and everything. Like, how did that go?
Well, I'm glad the year is over because it is kind of a daily struggle to teach over Zoom. My curriculum, my subject area lends itself pretty well to online learning. Video production in the classroom, you spend a lot of time working one-on-one with kids at computers. Mm-hmm. And while it's not the same online, with breakout rooms, you have the opportunity to meet with kids and give them the techniques that they need at that point. So that's similar. There's a lot missing from online, and it has to do with kind of in-person collaboration and generating ideas and just kind of riding the energy in the room to do the work, all phases of video production. I mean, my job is, of course, to teach kids how to make videos, but it's also to help kids on their life journey. And that's really hard to do over Zoom. So I feel like student work indicates that it was a successful year in a lot of ways, but there's no getting around the fact that there was a lot missing this year also. Yeah.
Just the whole, what I loved about your class, it was like the hangout aspect in some ways. I'm not sure if that's continued over the last 5 years, but it was such a great, I don't know, in many ways it was like a laid back class. There's a lot of working, a lot of just like shouting across the room, like, hey, help me out with this and everything. And of course that's, you can't translate those things online, it's just brutal,
Yeah, the way I set the class up is kids are making individual projects, but that doesn't mean there isn't a lot of collaboration. There's kids reaching out to other kids for technical support. Can you operate camera for me today after school, as an example, and sharing ideas. And really just what's missing from the online version is like that kind of classroom buzz where creativity begets creativity and people share their abilities.
How have you been working with Miss Green or Marini on this whole thing? Because now she's in the video editing thing, right?
Yeah. Initially, when I took over video production at Berkeley High, I taught both intro and advanced. And then we grew the program to the point where I couldn't do it all. So we had Candace Youngblood teach advanced video.
Oh, okay.
And she did that for 2 years. And then last year, for the first time, we had Amanda Marini teach advanced video. And with Amanda's background as a film major, as a experienced teacher in the realm of film theory with some production, it was a really smooth transition for her to take over a class that is mostly film production and some film theory. And I got to say, she was absolutely great in the role. Mm-hmm. She loved the kids. She loved the work. The kids loved her. The kids loved the work. So every indication is that it was an excellent first year. And it really makes me excited to think what years 2 through ? Are going to be like, because she said, she just said no uncertain terms. She loves the gig. And so she and I have plans to grow the program even more. We've tried to get a second section of advanced video off the ground. We haven't been able to. I also have a long-held desire to launch a class called documentary video production at Berkeley High. So there are a lot of ways in which I think the program has a very bright future. And it's in large part because she has joined the team.
I remember when I came to the class the first time, it was like a very small thing. It was like just in one subsection of Berkeley High, right? And it was like this. I feel like you didn't even have the studio set up, right? At least when I took it, right? The whole equipment room and everything. I feel like that developed over the time I was there. Like I feel like it was just a closet when I.
Interesting.
It's amazing the evolution of this whole thing.
You know what happened is that. I don't know precisely when, but we became CTE classes, career technical education classes, and that comes with its own independent funding stream. So thanks to the fact that career technical education is very big in the state of California, we're preparing kids for college and career, means that we've been able to we've been really well supported. And our inventory of equipment has grown exponentially. Our computers are continually being upgraded. We're going to have 18 new iMacs in my lab in the fall. Brand new iMacs. We are upgrading the sound studio like you wouldn't believe. We got a sound booth just before before lockdown, we purchased and assembled a sound booth, a professional quality sound booth that sits in the corner of the sound studio. And we've upgraded the computer in there, and we've got the multicolored backdrops, and we've got light kits. And so it's been really fun. If you are a person who, like me, enjoys the toys of the trade, we've done really, really well. We have a drone now.
You have a drone now?
We have a drone. So because, I mean, drone videography is a big thing, and I got a grant and I got a drone. It's a modest one. And I've been able to put it to use, but we bought it right before quarantine started. So no kids have been able to fly it yet. I look forward to teaching them how to in the fall. Yeah,
that's also another technical thing about quarantine is like how you loaning out. Most kids don't have film equipment. Like, was there a system for loaning out equipment, or are we just having shooting your iPhones type stuff?
That's right. We moved the whole thing to iPhones, and I felt fine about it because, as they say, it's not the quality of the equipment, it's the quality of the story. So with that baseline and my love of toys, we made use of smartphones. We signed out a very small number of cameras to kids who didn't have smartphones. And I was able to get a smartphone tripod for every kid. And we signed those out early on. And I think a tripod is, I felt and still feel like the tripod is the one thing you can do to step up your video game. Not as many kids put them to use as I would have liked. Not as many kids have returned them as I would like, but we're working on it.
Well, I was amazed how because I just got it. I finally got a new iPhone. I had this one for almost 10 years, and it finally dropped. And I was like, all right, it's time. Basically, every app doesn't work on it. But shooting video on this just at like my friend's party, I was amazed how like when I hold it, it actually holds pretty still. I mean, it's not a tripod level, but it is not, it does not have the handheld, off balance quality that like I would have on my DSLR, or even when I was trying to replicate the Steadicam. I remember in the short I made it back in your class. It's really pretty impressive. You can see why people like. Have you seen those like Soderbergh movies that he shot on an iPhone? He did a couple. I remember. He said he was going to retire. And he's like, I'm retiring in 2013. And then since then, he's made, I think, 7 or 8 films, and also a great TV series called The Nick, which I highly recommend. But he did
let me get these written down. We got Soderbergh shorts.
Yeah. Well, no, not shorts. They're just feature films. He's made like 7, 8. I don't know. Maybe I'm exaggerating. At least 6 or something, including a wonderful movie last year called Let Them All Talk. But his he did a couple. What were the ones on iPhone? He did one that was like a kind of a horror movie / psychological thriller about this woman who gets thrown in prison in an insane asylum, but she's not insane, with Claire Foy. And it's like the harshness of the iPhone actually really complements the what you're seeing in the film, the quality of the film.
A film I saw shot on an iPhone that I absolutely loved and was made better by the iPhone. In fact, it was shot on an iPhone. It's called Tangerine. Have you seen it?
Yeah, that's really good.
You probably
really
put me onto that. I really dug that movie.
Yeah,
What was the name of that TV series he did?
It's called The Nick, Knick. It's about basically turn of the century medicine in New York. It's with Clive Owen. And I think it's probably one of the best things Soderbergh. Pretty graphic stuff. Early medicine is not, super,
not
quaint, but
not where you want to be if you got to have an amputation.
But I'm blown away by that guy. How he just shoots everything himself, and everything is just him on a wheelchair, or he's his own cinematographer, he's his own editor, he shoots the footage, he edits it the day he gets home. Like he is just like one of the most creatively adept people and prolific people I can think of in all of Hollywood. And he publishes his film logs, everything he watches, everything he reads in a year. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but that's it's like he's making 2 movies a year, and he's actually able to keep up like the stream of like keeping up with new films the way I'd like to. So I wish I had that sort of work ethic. I fear I'm more the opposite direction, but he's great. Oh, yeah, and the other one he made, actually, you'd probably be interested. It's written by the guy who wrote the original play of Moonlight, Terrell Alvin McCraney.
What was the connection between Soderbergh and...
Yeah, Soderbergh, the other film he shot on an iPhone is called High Flying Bird. It was a Netflix film. Actually, it's with Andre Holland, who's in Moonlight. And that is another really good film. And it's about basically NBA lockdown and sort of NBA players sort of taking agency of of their own taking power away from their NBA overlords in some ways. It's a very interesting movie.
Interesting.
And again, iPhone aesthetic. I don't know. There's a lot of stuff you could do with sort of like flying the camera around it. It's really interesting. I think it's almost like he's taken that and then applied it to his films shot on regular cameras. But yeah, that man's stuff is worth checking. I don't know. We haven't gotten to do our normal like film catch up too, this is a perfect forum for this as well. Like, what have you been watching over the last year?
I've been watching a ton over the last year.
Yeah, naturally.
I'm just blown away by the most recent season of Master of None.
Oh, I got to watch that. That just came out, right?
I just think like it's kind of amazing to me that Aziz Ansari and his people are creative and courageous enough to produce a series like the one they just did. We ate that up. I think you and I are both working our way through Underground Railroad. And I have, the jury is still out, but I did read the book beforehand, and it might just simply be one of those situations where the movie can't live up to the book. As much as I want to love it, I'm a huge Barry Jenkins fan, but I'm just not, I don't adore it yet.
I don't know. I've only seen 4 episodes, and I can't really pass judgment, but I have to say, the episode I thought was the best of those 4. I thought the one with the slave catcher's backstory actually to me was more, because it was a more interesting character story. Because I think there's something in a way it's actually the closest thing I think to Moonlight that he's done, because which is odd to say, but both are about like they're about masculinity, and then they're about like a young man who's like sort of like creating a shell around himself of kind of like not in Moonlight's case, not evil, but like kind of like the self-protectiveness and shedding the vulnerability of being a boy and becoming a man. And I thought in that just 40 minutes, it was, the show is very compelling and it's very well made. You can't deny. And the Barry Jenkins' command of the POV shot and of cinematography is just astonishing. But I think I'm trying to think about why I thought 12 Years a Slave worked in terms of being like a movie about slavery and about, because to me, I find movies where it's about like suffering or about, you have just like a nice character and you're like, oh, so like the situation is what's dramatic and the situation is what's like what grabs you. But in terms of character, it's not as interesting, because it's just like a nice person caught up in something. But seeing a ostensibly nice kid and peeling back the layers of this guy is, psychotic, and seeing him become like an evil, a fucking slave catcher, that to me is like, was really, really powerful. But what's may surprise you is that I'm pretty sure that wasn't in the book, that there is no chapter. Really?
His backstory, that there's no deep exploration of his backstory. Now, I say I'm not certain because I listened to it on audiobooks and I'm just not as attentive. So it's that combined with quarantine brain. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure he added that. And I hear you on all those interesting points, but I do want to say that shifting the focus to the extent that he did onto the story of a white person is, I think, maybe a little problematic.
Well, but why though? I always have to say, but why? Because I mean, I think it's, especially if it's not in the book, that's a pretty interesting choice. I mean, also just a narrative choice of like, you're following this thing and that story reaches its dramatic apex of Cora, right? That's her name, right? The main character. And then just like, okay, we're just going to shoot in a completely different direction and learn about the slave catcher and develop. I mean, I suppose maybe it's, well, tell me why you say it's problematic.
Simply because there have been a lot of stories about white people and there haven't been nearly as many stories of black people. And this is one that has 10 hours to go deep. And he took away some of that time. Like I hear you about Cora. She by no means is she a blank slate. The actor is super subtle, but also
she's great,
complex. Yeah. But for more kind of clear exposition on a character, frankly, I would have enjoyed to know more about her.
Yeah, no, I'm
stuff in the book that doesn't get treated, like the complexities of her relationship with her mom and her life right after her mom ditched. Oops, spoiler alert.
Yeah, well, no, I think I got to that part, but the whole thing of, I guess I could see what you mean. I mean, also just, I mean, this is the thing. I haven't watched the last 6 episodes. I'm going to soon, but if in those episodes if I watch those and I still think the most interesting thing was the backstory of the slave catcher, that is kind of a problem. Like that is like, it's a problem. I mean, I tend to not think about the sort of like, oh, there's been so many. Cause I mean, if I think about everything in terms of, the disparity of black stories that have been told in history and white stories being told in history, you sort of, then every new white film you sort of would have to reject wholesale, I think, more if that's the line you're taking, because it's just like there have been so many at this point, But I still think that's sort of unfair. But
I hear you. But I don't think you have to reject a new white film wholesale. I think it's something to note. It's like when I teach kids about the Bechdel test, I don't offer them that framework as a justification for just disposing of a film. I just think it's an interesting thing to note. And so that when I'm like teaching a new crop of young filmmakers, I like to get them thinking about what they're seeing coming out of Hollywood, coming out of independent film production, and think about what they want to contribute to the world of media, if you will, not as a make or break.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's, probably too harsh for me to say it like that, but I still think whatever the case is, racially or dramatically, that would not be a good sign. I mean, in 4 episodes, if I'm most interested in that side of the story, the Bechdel test, by the way, I want to ask you about that, because that whole thing I've been thinking about. Well, not really thinking about that much, but it was definitely something I learned about, I don't know, in high school or whatever. And I've sort of been asking myself, like, does that really work on individual films? I mean, to me, the Bechdel test, personally speaking, I only see its value in assessing all of film. Like, to me, it's like, just in the same way, it's like if you look at a whole year of films and there are no films with black people, or you watch a year of films and there are no films that pass the Bechdel test, that's a problem. You're like, okay, there's some disparity there. But if an individual film, I mean, do you or other of your students watch just a film? Do you watch Cuckoo's Nest and go, oh, this doesn't pass the Bechdel test, this is really a knock on the movie? Because I don't know if I really buy that.
I find it useful to consider in the context of individual films, and that film is a great example. You see, I mean, suffice to say, we all have grown up, especially older people like me, with, like the norm being white male focused films. Mm-hmm. So thankfully,
100 years of filmmaking,
we're well into a transitional era in which other stories are getting told, other characters are getting featured.
Right.
When I am looking, let's just take me as a teacher. When I'm looking at Cuckoo's Nest, and it's such an epic fail on the Bechdel test and lots of other measures. I've heard the Bechdel test used to consider the roles for people of color. Same idea. Do they have names? Do they have conversations?
You apply that to most groups. Yeah.
And that film fails on a lot of levels. So even though I still love it, and even though I think people should watch it, I don't teach it anymore. Because it needs so much contextualizing and it needs so much kind of justifying that I'm like, while I'm working on this film, there's 5 new great films that I could be introducing to students. Well, so that's why Cuckoo's Nest out, Moonlight in. Not because of one thing, but because of the accumulation of things.
Moonlight also doesn't pass the Bechdel test.
No, not every film is going to pass it. Not every great, teachable, worthy film is going to pass that particular test.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, just personally, to me, I'm like, I don't know if I really can knock a film. There are great films by women also that are not. I don't know. I remember reading like this tweet where someone was talking about they wrote a script and it passes the Bechdel test and it passes all these different things of like different aspects of diversity or different things that are like assure the audience that the work is not problematic. And I was just like, I don't know, like, is this a healthy way? I mean, this is just a broader question to ask about filmmaking in general? Like, is this? I don't know. I mean, you may feel differently, but to me, I look at a lot of, cultural stuff in the world of film and sort of ask, like, is it really a healthy thing for artists, or, and even worse, studios? Because when it's studios, it just becomes math. It just becomes, we need to insert A into B, and we need to, okay, where's the black person in this movie? It becomes very tokenistic. But even if you're a filmmaker, I just think it becomes kind of, I just don't think it's the greatest way to make art, to be self-conscious about it, because I think it affects, I mean, the thing is, it's not even just leveled at white male filmmakers. Like, I feel like I see more second guessing towards films, whether made by white or even black people. I mean, just use black films as an example. Any film where it features, leads in any kind of marginalized transgender, community, it becomes very like small, the target they have to hit. No one cares about, like, if it's a white film about some scumbag, people are like, oh great, the white guy's a scumbag. If it's Captain America, we're like, great, who cares? But when it's like a black film, like what was I looking at, like if it's something like Harriet or something like that, there's always like this weird desire to sort of like nitpick these things or just reject them. I mean, like, I'm seeing people who are rejecting Underground Railroad just wholesale because it's about slavery. And there's this whole like conversation going on about like how, oh, we don't need any more slave movies, which I understand on an emotional level, because it's like, when that's like the ubiquitous, like only way that your community has been portrayed, that really sucks. But it's like, you're going to reject the new Barry Jenkins movie just without even seeing it, just because of that. Like, I don't know. I just can't really reconcile that.
I think you're kind of raising a lot of issues. And one of them is summarized for me by haters gonna hate. I mean, critics, professional and otherwise, they have to make a name for themselves. They want to make an impact. So they're going to people are going to take issue just for the sake of taking issue. And the older I get, the more I see it in all walks of life, and add that to the internet, rather add the internet to that. And it's like, everybody's got an opinion. Everybody's going to try to differentiate themselves from the crowd. Right. And I'm not really about that. I'm not about that. But I do think that I'm really caught up in this notion of being an anti-racist teacher. And an anti-racist teacher is either actively interrupting patterns of racism, or they're contributing to them. Mm-hmm. So if I'm not applying things like the Bechdel test and similar kinds of critical thinking to the films that I'm choosing, the films that I'm teaching, then I'm perpetuating, that 100+ years of bigotry in film. So I feel like,
you really think you're perpetuating? I mean, I think if there was if you were like ignoring any contribution of black people to cinema, I think you could say that at least it would be a form of erasure. But I don't know, like something like teaching Cuckoo's Nest. Like, I don't think, I just feel like you and other teachers shouldn't carry that sort of guilt. I mean, I think those films were so important and moving to not just me, but our whole class, our entire class when we watched that movie.
Yeah, no, it's a super powerful film, and but I've got limited time in the classroom, and if I'm going to do 5 films over the course of a year, everyone has to be really, really strong. Not perfect. There is no such thing as a perfect film, but like, there's 3 glaring problems that come to mind when I think about Cuckoo's Nest: the depiction of women, the depiction of mental illness, and the depiction of black people. And I got a lot of people in my classroom who are tired of seeing distortions in those 3 depictions and misrepresentations. And they deserve to see a teachable film that's great in lots of ways and doesn't also set back their own self-image, distort their worldview. And I think they can have it all. So I just think, this is like really my obligation. I do feel an obligation to think about not great films because they're in the canon, but great films that are going to meet the needs of my students. And sometimes there's a difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's an interesting. That's an interesting point you make. That the whole, I don't know. It's very tough. I think people are. I don't know.
I know what you're wary of. I get what you're wary of. But I think that it's not an either or. I think we as viewers and me as a teacher, we can have it all. It's an extraordinarily rich time. Mm-hmm. Now, if I can just take it in a slightly different direction.
Yeah, go for it.
You asked me what I've been watching lately, and I'll go lowbrow. You know that. Yeah. Have you heard of or watched this series of reality TV called Alone?
No, I've never even heard of it, actually.
I just love it. Mary and I, my wife and I, we watched all 6 seasons in short order. The premise is that they take 10 survivalists, people with some outdoor wilderness experience, and they scatter them around initially the north end of Vancouver Island. So, we're talking like practically southern Alaska, dense, wooded, harsh, rainy conditions. Each of the 10 is separated from the other, so they never see or hear anybody else, like 5 miles apart. Mm-hmm. And the challenge is to survive out there alone the longest. They have a satellite device so that they can tap out whenever they've had enough. They're out there with 10 items like axes and bows and arrows and whatnot. And they're out there with a whole bunch of video equipment because there is no crew. They are their own crew.
Oh, really?
So they're genuinely alone. They get a visit.
I always have that question with like Survivor where it's like, we're stranded, but there's the whole crew,
What I've been hearing about some of those other shows where there is a crew and a craft tent and trailers and whatnot is that some of the participants are sneaking into the craft tent at night and stealing donuts and shit like that.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Hilarious.
Yeah, definitely. That's great.
And then the producers have to ask the question, what do we do now? Do we bust them and shut down the show?
Right.
But anyway, so these people are out there and they're sort of burdened by the obligation to shoot something like 8 hours of video of themselves per day. But what they're doing is it's just great TV. I'm sorry. It's great TV. They're making themselves a gill net and they're positioning the gill net and they're celebrating the first fish they caught and they're getting injured and they're doing video diaries the whole time and letting you into their thinking. And the isolation, like they how Tom Hanks had the volleyball? Well, they've got their video camera and it's got a very authentic feel. And these people are so hardy. If you like survivalists doing what they do, they don't just shoot an arrow at a squirrel. They hit the squirrel. They do all that stuff. It's really awesome TV. Wow.
Yeah, I haven't watched reality TV like any. I used to love these like competition shows, and I watched Survivor when I was younger, and a lot of stuff when I was younger. Project Runway. I don't know why I used to like that show. I probably just like Tim Gunn, but I've been watching a bit of Survivor again because my brother's been watching it. I'm like, I think maybe it's sort of like the sort of thing you're. Like when I sort of rejected animated films when I became a teenager, like this is for kids or whatever. This is dumb. But I'm watching Survivor like just a couple of days ago, and I was like, this is actually really well made, like well edited, scored. Like it's actually like a well crafted show on top of just being fun, sort of entertainment.
Well, and, if you can take that, if you can do Survivor, you're going to love Alone because it's really better.
Oh my God, I'm seeing like wild animals and stuff crawling around. Wow.
Oh, you're already on the trailer.
Yeah, I was like, there's it's all like black and white, like it looks like Blair Witch Project.
The night vision cam.
Yeah. Oh, that's super interesting. Have you seen? Do you have Hulu, by the way?
We do. We've been
there's
on
this
Handmaid's
thing.
Tale.
Oh yeah, has that been? Have we talked about that? Because I felt like the first season of that was really good, and then I never watched anymore because people said it got like bad.
Yeah. I think the first 2 were good, but this third one is like, it's just a habit at this point. No, I don't think it's held up.
Yeah, I love Elizabeth Moss. Like she's just great. I think everything she's in, she's great. But
yeah, she carries this. I mean, the camera is on her almost the whole time, mostly in extreme close up.
Did you ever see that movie where she played this like totally abusive, horrible punk rock star called Her Smell? This is a movie very divisive. I recommend it to our film club, which is largely older guys, not people who would normally see a movie like this. I'll say, and I'd say almost uniformly they hated it. But I think it's one of the best films of the decade. It's just to me, it's just a 2-hour immersion into being around. It's one of the best just portrayals of being around a really toxic person. And I think most people like it's a Friday night. He's like, is this something you really want to just watch, hang out, sit down with your, friends and watch, hang out with a toxic person? Not really. But for me,
that's actually my kind of film.
Exactly. No, for me, I'm like, oh yeah, this is awesome. And it's written very theatrically. So it's sort of, I was comparing to Sunset Boulevard. To me, it reminded me a lot of like Gloria Swanson in that movie. This big, huge performance. One of the best performances in the last 10 years, I would say. Just amazing. And it's a really good other cast in it too, who's like Dan Stevens, and her other bandmates are really good. I don't know if you've heard of the actresses, but it's really great film. And what's great is it's like at least 90 minutes of just pure, and it's shot by the guy. Did you see Good Time or stuff by the Safdie brothers? It's shot in that style where it's like this handheld long lenses, like it's just very claustrophobic, and you're just like, oh my God, I can't take it anymore being around this woman. And then there's like a turn in the movie, and the film actually goes to a place that I thought was surprisingly emotional. Like after just watching, like just for the thrill of like, oh my God, these people being horrible to each other. It comes out in a place I thought was very powerful. I mean, again, I don't know if this is, something you would want to see and inflict on yourself.
It actually sounds like my kind of film, and I can always bail if I don't like it. You brought to mind several films, and you tell me if there's any similarity at all. Mommy Dearest, another.
Oh yeah, I haven't seen it, but
outsized toxic personality.
I love Faye Dunaway. Yeah,
she's great. And then a film called Georgia with Jennifer Jason Leigh.
Oh yeah, I should see that. I'm like a huge Jennifer Jason Leigh fan. So
I really like that one. Yeah. And then, have you ever seen a documentary called Dig?
No.
It describes the rivalry between two San Francisco bands, the Dandy Warhols and Brian Jonestown Massacre.
Wow.
And there's a lot of large toxic rock and roll personalities.
Oh, that's definitely.
Tell me, how do you spell the name of the Elizabeth Moss film?
Her Smell. Just those
Her
two
Smell.
words. Her Smell.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
2018. Alex Ross Perry. Yeah. And to backtrack, I was asking about Hulu actually because I was going to recommend one of the best things I've seen recently is this. I don't even know how to describe it. It's sort of a magic show. That is the loose, simplistic way of describing what it is. But it's a live stage performance. The film and the stage performance are directed by Frank Oz, and it's called In and of Itself. And I don't know. I just found it very interesting. I've never seen anything like it. This is a film from this year. And it's to me feels truly singular, and it's very. I could see you watching it and going, this is tomfoolery, this is claptrap, or watching it and going, I got tears in my eyes. I don't really know. I don't quite have a sense for you of where your irony cutoff is, but for me, I found it very moving. And I think you could approach it as being profound and philosophical, but you could also just approach it as being like, this is just one of the greatest magic acts I've ever seen. I'm sure the magician at the center of it would balk at that idea and say, oh, what I'm making is so profound. And I'm like, I don't know how profound it actually is, but just watching, to me, a big part of magic is seeing the impact it has on people. Like I love when you watch David Blaine, he does a trick on the street and people will start crying. There's like one where he shows it and like they just start running down the street, like away from him. There's one where he shows it to Harrison Ford, and Harrison Ford like he goes like this and he says, "Get the fuck out of my house," or something like that.
Wow.
And
wow.
So it's a great, but anyway, so In and of Itself is worth seeing just for that. And I think the way it's cut together and the way you see people's reactions and all these different things is just really, really interesting and a really just singular work.
I'm gonna check it out.
Yeah. Let's see. I don't know if I have anything else to. This is the reason I wanted to talk to you. I'm even wearing the Clint shirt.
Oh wow, nice.
Because I was texting you a while back and we were having this debate about Clint Eastwood, and I said, well, what better forum to talk about than this? Because I think Clint Eastwood is terrific, and I was wondering what turned you off of the great Clint.
Well, I first of all, I don't have particularly strong substantiation for my opinion. So I'm just going to say this is not because I'm an expert on his films or the man, but I had a hard time separating art from artist when he spoke at the Republican National Convention some years ago.
Where he talked to the chair or whatever.
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of, that's too bad. I know a lot of people who feel that way.
I just think when I looked at, I actually taught not El Camino, Gran Torino.
El Camino.
Gran Torino just looked like a film that was really not really up to date. It just felt like kind of reactionary film from another time.
Reactionary film?
But it's been 10 years since I've seen the movie, so don't ask me to support it. I just think maybe it's just that I just don't get it. I don't get Clint Eastwood's appeal. I saw Pale Rider when it came out, and that was supposed to be this big, deep meditation. And I just, at the time, I didn't really get it. I probably appreciate it more now.
I agree. I don't think Pale Rider is really
really? Because
I didn't like
that elevated him enormously back in the day.
Yeah, the thing about Eastwood for me is I think he didn't become great until he turned 60. Like I think he was a great movie star and just like a cool dude, but with the exception of The Outlaw Josie Wales, which I think is a great movie. That, like, if you're gonna watch the early Clint Western, I think that's, in terms of the ones he's directed, that's the one. Because I think High Plains Drifter is okay, and it's also just incredibly nihilistic, miserable movie. But Josie Wales to me is a very like entertaining, hugely quotable, and also just very I think very like kind-hearted movie. He kind of becomes the surrogate family forms around him. And
I'm sorry, which film was that?
Josie Wales. Yeah.
Okay.
It's all these sort of people who have had their lives sort of shattered by the Civil War kind of coming together. And I don't know, it's a really interesting movie. Miss Green taught it when I was in, her class. And that's definitely was a favorite of hers. We got a lot of interesting discussion out of it. But yeah, the other Eastwood, I mean, of course, there's the Westerns he did Leone, which are kind of, everyone says are really great. I assume they're good. I saw them so long ago. But I think a lot of people look at Clint as kind of the Dirty Harry still, kind of the simplistic, like, guy who goes out and, because if you listen to people really, it's like people who are fans and people who hate Clint Eastwood both talk about him in terms of this, like, oh, he's the macho, whatever. He's this, he's the guy who's gonna, take a gun and, do what he wants or whatever. And I think since Unforgiven, he's sort of taken a microscope to that kind of mentality a lot, and he's been a lot more self-reflective. I like Mystic River is like a whole movie about like the pitfalls of taking the sort of revenge he might have taken in his movies from 30 years before. Same with, Gran Torino. I think Gran Torino is flawed because they're just, it's kind of a hokey script and it's not his greatest thing. But I think even that movie is about a guy who's sort of assessing that the hyper masculine sort of ways he's conducted his life, have ended up backfiring, not only destroying his life, but there's that whole scene where he goes out and he basically like, he takes a gun to the guy and says, if you come back, he does the typical Eastwood thing. And what does that do? It causes them to like beat up this, the young woman, it causes, nothing but just further strife for him. And he realizes like, like this way of, living his life is not the way to do it. And, but I think there's definitely something there more than it seems, I guess. I don't know.
Well, I've been on a big Cormac McCarthy kick. I just finished his trilogy, and I am all into that stuff. So I'm going to go back to Outlaw Josie Wales and start there, and maybe have more to say next time we talk. Tell me this. Why haven't more Cormac McCarthy novels been made into films?
It's a good question. I haven't actually read... I don't think I've read Cormac McCarthy, but I just watched No Country for Old Men, which is just... astonishing movie.
I just rewatched that too. That's a great movie.
That is a haunting film. I was just like, there's so much stuff in it where it just the lack of music and the way they just like they'll move into the. I think there's one part where the camera like is over Bardem and it goes in on the beeping tracker. It goes down and he turns it off, and then it cuts to darkness, and he's walking silently with his socks. I can't even really describe why that's so powerful, but there's just so much just stuff you'll never forget in that movie.
How do you, like, if you're Mrs. Bardem, how do you like trust your partner after that?
I don't know. He seems like a very genial guy. There's a great. Oh, go ahead.
No, that's all.
No, there's a great behind the scenes. I guess it's sort of a mockumentary that Brolin made, like during the making of the film, and it's basically just him and Bardem and Woody Harrelson like goofing on the Coen brothers and like acting like they're really, they're tyrants on set or whatever. And Bardem just seems he seems like a very chill guy, actually. But it's terrifying.
It's called acting.
Yeah.
I gotta say, did you see The Road? Another Cormac McCarthy?
No, I haven't actually.
Oh well, it's got Vigo, so it's got to be good.
Mm-hmm.
I really recommend that one, and I just think this Border trilogy is so ripe for the making. Yeah.
It's weird how there are not many. I'm looking at IMDb. There's only like 4 or 5 Cormac McCarthy writing credits. There's one. It's actually Tommy Lee Jones directed a film version of a play he did, which is just it's a two-hander. It's just Tommy Lee Jones and Samuel L. Jackson, I guess, in a room or something like that. I've always wanted to see it, but
that sounds good.
Yeah, 90 minutes of just 2 of our greatest actors. And
have you seen a film with Guy Pearce called the Proposition?
No.
It's an Australian Western, and it's Guy Pearce and some other people I don't recognize. But the annoying thing is that I found it on Amazon Prime, but it's interrupted by like 3 minutes of commercials every 10 minutes. It's unwatchable. It's unwatchable. God. And I was wondering if you knew of where to see it without the interruptions.
Well, I got to recommend, I can't guarantee it's on here, but it probably is. I have been getting into the Netflix DVD subscription. And I think that's, most people say, what then? I didn't even know that still is around. But I think it's like the best subscription service to have, because it's the amount of films I've found on there that are unavailable streaming. I'd say at least 30, maybe 40 films that I've always I've been always wanting to see, this guy's first movie, or some, Amy Heckerling's Michelle Pfeiffer movie, or some weird obscure stuff or whatever. And the only place to find it is on the Netflix DVD website. Let me just look at the proposition. Also, if I haven't told you about it, there's a website called Just Watch that is a great resource for finding where you can stream stuff. It kind of just gives you every place something is streaming. That's super. If you haven't found that, that's super useful.
That sounds good. Justwatch.com.
Yeah. To me, I'm looking at Just Watch. There's one, Roku, where you can watch it with ads. There's a lot of places with ads, but it is on Canopy, which is another really good streaming service. Canopy is a free streaming service that if you have all you need is a library card.
Yeah.
Oh, you have that.
I haven't used it, but I know of it. So it doesn't indicate whether Canopy has it with or without ads?
No, it doesn't have ads. Canopy. It actually does indicate on Just Watch which services have ads, which you have to subscribe to, and which it's just free. And Canopy doesn't do ads. Oddly, it is one of the few films on that the DVD is not available, but that's pretty rare. I have a queue of about 275 movies on here. I've always wanted to see that. Throw it in the Netflix DVD queue, and that's just the stuff that isn't streaming. Of course, I have tons of stuff on there.
Have you read or watched The Good Lord Bird?
No, I don't know what it was in the last few years. I just have not watched Underground Railroad is probably the third TV series I've watched in the last 2 years. I don't know why. I used to watch a lot more, but I'd want to watch that. Ethan Hawke, right? Yeah,
it's Ethan Hawke and lots of him. And then I went to it because I had as a guest speaker in my class this year Rafael Casal.
Really? Oh, you did?
Cass and Berkeley High grad. And
former student of yours, no?
And former student of mine. And he was in it. He comes in pretty late, and he has a good but not major role. And Daveed Diggs, another Berkeley High guy, is in it as Frederick Douglass. And I think I started out by reading the book and then watching the series. It's entertaining. Good.
Sterling recommendation.
I don't know. It's part of quarantine. Is like I kind of consume it less critically than I do in normal life.
I know what you mean. I mean, I think also just the standard of quality of just the last year and a half of movies is probably just lower because so much stuff is getting pushed back. But I definitely feel like, I don't know, when me and my friend were doing our top 10 list, there's a lot of stuff I would never have made my top 10 list in a million years that was going on just because it was so. There's only like, I don't know. There's only the Soderbergh movie I really loved and Sofia Coppola's movie I really liked. Though that's unfortunately it's on Apple TV Plus, which is a service. I do have Apple TV Plus. I assume not, right?
I think I might be on a trial right now.
Oh, okay. Well,
what's the film called?
It's called On the Rocks. It's with Bill Murray and Rashida Jones.
Oh.
That was really great. Very laid back. Like it's just a great hangout movie. And what's that?
Are you up on the films of Miranda July?
No, I haven't seen Cajillionaire, right?
Yes, that's the one we recently saw.
Yeah.
That is quirky and unique and quite fun and also painful. Coming of age film. Miranda July, product of Berkeley, not Berkeley High, but she's local.
Oh, really? Yeah, Miranda July. The thing I've actually seen by her is she did a series of little like micro shorts on Instagram, I think, with Margaret Qualley, the actress, and it was basically these like two-handers where it's just them, like FaceTiming, I guess. And you sort of click on it and you don't even know, is this just is this two people hanging out? Is this a podcast? What is this? And you click on it and then it's like very emotional and like Qualley's like crying, talking to July and like, what are they even talking about? And it sort of is like this. Almost like it's like kind of new way of telling like a short story, short form filmmaking, of just completely minimalist. It's clearly scripted, but just very minimalist filmmaking. I just thought that was really another one of those things. Like I've never really seen anything quite like that. I don't know if I could even
find that.
It's on her just Miranda July's Instagram. I don't even know if I could find it, but. And
who's the other actor?
It's Margaret Qualley, who was in. Oh God! Did you see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
No, I need to.
Oh my God! You haven't seen that?
I know.
Oh man! I saw that like 7 times in the theater. Oh my God! Love that movie. Anyway, she was in that. She was in a movie called Novitiate. I don't know. She's actually Margaret Qualley is the daughter of Andy McDowell, I think.
No kidding. Is Josh Brolin Barbara Streisand's son?
Gee, I don't know. Josh Brolin?
Is he too old to be her son?
Now I'm looking this up. Oh, he's stepson.
Oh, that makes more sense.
Yeah, James Brolin and okay. Yeah, I was about to say. I feel like I would have known that. I'm scrolling through her Instagram. I don't know if I can find this. Oh, I think I found it. I'll send it to you. I don't know. This might be the sort of thing you'd watch and go, what? But Miranda July has a lot of just very weird, surreal, hard to put your finger on sort of content. But I definitely respect it. I've always wanted to see her movies. Her first movie was on Ebert's like best of the decade list. And I don't know, frankly, don't know why I haven't watched it, but I intend to.
You, me, and everyone we know.
Mm-hmm.
That put me onto her.
Yeah.
But here's what my son put me onto recently. Long YouTube videos of police interrogations of famous criminals.
Really?
Yeah. And it's not just, you can watch the uncut footage, of course, but you can also find some guy edits and narrates these interviews to give his analysis of what's going on. And like the person who shot up the Parkland High School in Florida, he did a whole segment on him, and it was focusing on people who try to act insane so as to get a lesser sentence. And he just rips apart their performances. It's just like I bring it up because my son, who's 21, he's almost like post movie. I'd say he's pretty much post movie.
Yeah.
And
That's a thing, you know. There's a weird, I don't know. I hate to even face it, but I see it with my brother too, where it's like there's something about it's like the attention span, and I think also just like the quality of movies. Also, you know, like I was thinking about just the fact that, you know, I was watching maybe a YouTube video or something where me and my brother were watching and just like dying laughing. And I'm like, there are like maybe 6 movies that have made me laugh as hard as most of the funniest things I've just seen on YouTube or even just like on social media or whatever, you know, like there are certain things, you know, we'd like to think movies could do everything, but there are certain things I think we are finding different formats that it can do better. I mean, even like long form, you know, deep narrative, in some ways it's sort of been revealed, well, theoretically revealed that television can sometimes do it better. And I think these days you get more interesting stuff on television in some ways. But yeah, that is, you know, I do notice like people like my brother, certainly people like where it's, you know, also just like more consumable too. Like it's one thing to just, I'll put on YouTube or something really quick. And it's another to be like, I'm going to sit down for 2 hours, you know? God, it makes me very sad to think about, but too. You know, it's like, but it's like, I don't know. I think it's happening. That's interesting. I haven't heard anyone else talk about that until you said that.
It's so depressing to think about. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to be retiring in 4 years, and I intend to be teaching video for all 4 years. Mm-hmm. So all those students, they're going to learn the beauty of feature films and documentary films. Like,
that's great.
I'm dinosaur enough to believe that that's important.
I mean, I think there's still, you know, there's still people with interest. I remember when at least, I mean, this is like 5 years ago now in your class. I mean, there are so many people who were just, I was rewatching Boogie Nights for our film club a couple of weeks ago, and it totally just brought me back to like, I remember when I was passing around my Blu-ray of Boogie Nights to all the different folks in that class, and like we were all like talking about just, you know, the very like ostentatious filmmaking. I think in some ways that's a good training wheels film because you really notice the technique, you notice him flying the camera everywhere, and I don't know. And you see really passionate people who are, you know, a few years younger than me on Twitter talking about film, or even, you know, geeking out about like people you never even imagined people would care about, you know, some, you know, Robert Altman or John Cassavetes, or just these like people, you know, it's nice to see there are some people who still care about it, even Buster Keaton or something like that. But when you just talk to just like some regular person you meet, mostly you're like, have you seen, you know, X movie? You know, oh, I've seen the Avengers or whatever, and that's about it. I mean, like that's the thing, like that kills me with Kazu, my brother, is like he'll watch all the Marvel TV shows. Like he's watching Loki now. He watched the WandaVision and the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. You know, and I'm sure they're good, but it's like, and I like the Marvel movies too. I thought Avengers End Game. Did you see that in theater? I thought it was one of the best movie going experiences I've ever had. I don't know. It's like this two-sided thing where it's like, it's this thing I really like, but you're seeing it suck the air out of so many other filmmakers and all these, you know, also, and like smaller artists who are not even, people are not watching, you know, most people are not watching, you know, your Martin Scorsese, like The Irishman or whatever, but let alone if you're just some, you know, like, I don't know, who's a newer filmmaker who we were just talking about, you know, so someone who's on their first movie in the last couple of years. I don't know how you get the eyeballs onto your new film. I mean, I can't imagine being a feature filmmaker right now, like trying to, I guess it's just like you do it for the work. You got to make the film. Like last year, there was a film called, there's one film called Relic, which is about like a woman who's taking care of her mother, who's sort of going through dementia. And it's sort of like a haunted house movie, and the house becomes a sort of like metaphor for dementia. And it's like one of the most like powerful portrayals of like the decaying last stages of old age I've ever seen on film. And that's a film that, like, I mean, obviously didn't play in theaters because of COVID, but you know, I don't know if anyone saw that movie or anyone was even like aware of it. I mean, I got it through the Netflix service, you know, and that's just one of many, you know, that are just came and went. And I mean, even when Martin Scorsese comes out with a movie and people are like, it's 3 hours, who cares? You know, it's like, I don't know. Did you get to see The Irishman?
I did.
Oh, you did. Okay. What'd you
Yeah,
think?
I didn't love it. I
Oh
mean,
no.
I don't want to paint with too broad a brush, but I feel like Martin Scorsese's best work is in the past. And maybe I shouldn't rule out what comes next.
I couldn't
But
disagree more.
here's my thing about The Irishman. Those CGI effects, they took away from the film. Like, if there's any truth to be had in a movie, it's going to be found, I think, mostly through an actor's face.
Mhm.
And as soon as I'm looking at a face I know, and there's clearly stuff going on there, my kind of affective filters go up. That was one concern I had with the film. And another was...
I actually understand that, by the way. That's a fair. That's a fair.
No, I actually liked the movie. I did like the movie. Let me just vent a tiny, petty pet peeve.
Go for it.
I have two.
Fair enough.
How come nobody who's having a cup of coffee can actually have real coffee? The cups, they're always empty. And I know the reason why: spill it on the wardrobe, set back the whole shoot, whatever. But like, the number of times I've seen people take a sip of coffee and then reveal the emptiness of their little teacup. I'm sick of it. The other one's similarly petty.
So fun. I never noticed that.
You will. They get a to-go cup, and it clearly has no heft. They're like waving it around. The other one is, and came to mind in the context of The Irishman, like, if a character's wearing, let's say, a Carhartt jacket, that's like a pretty powerful signifier, like working class guy. But the clothes are always new, like really new.
Right.
And if the guys are like, there was some stupid series with Kevin Costner, which is redundant.
Yellowstone?
Yes. A friend of mine tried to put me on Yellowstone, and I watched one of them and couldn't take it because they're all too beautiful and their hair's too perfect. They live and work outdoors and their clothes are all brand new. I just can't go there. So that's me just venting.
I don't know. I mean, I don't think I noticed any of that in The Irishman, but frankly, I don't know if I noticed the clothes thing. I don't know. At a certain point, it helps to maybe just not be a very observant person, because I know other people who have all these like qualms, and I'm like, oh really? I didn't notice that. But I'm also the guy who didn't like notice, there's always people who are like, oh, I predicted that plot twist, and I was like, I didn't see that coming. So it helps to be a little bit credulous.
I think I get distracted from more important issues by some of the shit that I notice.
Yeah.
I'm trying to let that habit go. Willing suspension of disbelief and all.
One thing I'll say about The Irishman, by the way, is I saw it the first time under very good conditions. I saw it at the Mill Valley Festival. Brad Bird was seated like 6 seats away from me. I saw it with my dad and my friend. It was great. But I was like, this is pretty good, but I was not crazy about it, because it's an odd movie. Like, it's sort of slow, and obviously it's very long, and I just didn't quite have a handle on it. And I saw it the second time, also in the and I think there's something weird about in the theater. If the effects for some reason looked worse on Netflix. I can't explain why that is. Like, I don't understand how that happens, but whatever it is, seeing the special effects, I don't know, maybe it's more diffuse. I don't know anything about the technical quality of projection versus your TV or whatever, but the aging stuff looks jankier on Netflix. But the second time I saw it, I was like, wait, this is great. This is one of the best films of the year. I loved it. And I've seen it subsequent times. And the last time I watched it, I think it was like the fourth time watching it, which is, maybe that's not a great sign if you have to watch a movie 4 times to acknowledge it's a masterpiece. I think it could be like number 1 Scorsese, like, which is crazy to say. But I watched it, and I watched Goodfellas. My friend was doing a series of podcasts on Scorsese, and I mean, I think Goodfellas still probably is number 1, just because it's just irresistible, but the one thing about Goodfellas is, and by design, it's a little anticlimactic. Like, it kind of just ends. You're like, wow, that's it. And to me, the ending of The Irishman is like unbelievably powerful and just so like haunting. And I don't know. I've never seen anything by Scorsese that probably anything that moved me so deeply. Maybe Hugo. I really like Hugo. This is where I take you to task for your idea that Scorsese is has his best work behind him, because I would say that about almost every other director of his age, even like Spielberg, who I love. Like, I don't think, even as much as I like Bridge of Spies, I don't think Spielberg is operating on the same level he was for the previous 30 years before this last decade. But I think you almost could make a case that the 2010s were one of Scorsese's best decades in his entire career. Because I didn't like Silence that much. I thought Silence was boring, but like Wolf of Wall Street is one of his best films. That was an incredible movie. I could see you wincing even at the thought of this.
No, it's super. I agree that it's super watchable, and it draws you in even as you're just repulsed by all those guys.
Yeah, it's a nightmare. I mean, it's a nightmarish thing to watch, but it's like hypnotic, and it's so true. Like, it's like that movie like speaks to so much of the people who have wrought chaos on our world in the last 10 years, really, you know?
I mean, this is where like I have a big part of my movie viewing identity and the way I process films is as a parent and as a teacher. And The Wolf of Wall Street, it feels a little bit like Fight Club to me, in that it purports to be critical of the worlds that they depict, but really they just come off like celebrations of greed and violence. And I like when a 15-year-old viewer watches Wolf of Wall Street, I don't think they're taking it as a critique of greed. I think they're taking it as a celebration of excess.
I think that's true.
Like crawling in or out of his Lamborghini, I can't remember which. I think it's just like all the kids are with him, you know, and I'm appalled by it.
Not only do I think that's true, but I know that's true. Well, not that I think the film is, and not that I think Scorsese is like, oh, secretly we're celebrating this. But I think so many of these movies, and there are other movies that I'm sure are, I'm trying to think of, like Fight Club is definitely the big one, where like this whole movie about like, you know, warped, you know, men and masculinity. And it's totally like a critique of this stuff. I mean, critique is too simplistic a word, but it's not a movie that's saying this is awesome. And then tons of guys were like, this only is this awesome, but we should start a fight club. Yeah, and it's like, but I don't know if that means that Fincher failed. Like, to me, that is almost a sign. I mean, it makes me weep for humanity, but I think it's a positive thing that a director wants to make a film that is not giving you on a silver platter, here's what I think the world should be. Because I mean, I've seen, especially nowadays, a lot of movies like that where I feel like artists are very self-protective, you know, and they kind of like want to make sure you know, I'm not a racist, or I'm not, a horrible person. But I think it's a good sign with something like Wolf of Wall Street is so uncompromising. And I think I would highly recommend you watch this interview that with Thelma Schoonmaker, who's Scorsese's, you know, longtime editor, and which is also just funny to imagine this woman who reminds me of like my aunt or someone editing this 3-hour like bacchanalian insane movie. And she's talking about how like that criticism, because people like the critics, there are people who said that about the movie, like that the movie is celebrating the excess that it deplores. And she was like, when if you can't see what this movie is really about, when Jordan Belfort is screaming at his wife, I think he hits his wife, right? And then taking the car, he kidnaps his daughter. He puts his daughter in the back of the car. He drives the car backwards and hits a wall, and you see the girl's head go back, his like 10-year-old daughter's head go back, and you know, and then the thing she was talking about was the scene where the woman shaves her head for, like, in the middle of this huge debaucherous party, this employee at Stratton Oakmont is having her head shaved for some, you know, sum of money, $1,000-something. And it's like, if you can't, that's the scene that Schoonmaker was talking about. It's like if you can't see what Marty is really talking about, when, you know, you're seeing this woman with her like shaved like strands of hair, you know, with her money and looking like just like miserable in the middle of this like party. He's like, I don't know, like how much more obvious do you want to make it?
You know
what? Another movie was like that was American Sniper. Actually, that was another one where everyone was going, "This is a pro-war movie," and I'm like, no, not even close. But it is tough because a lot of people do watch. I mean, if you want to really get depressed, look up the scenes of Wolf of Wall Street, like the scenes where he's giving his big speeches, his big like pitch speeches on YouTube. They have like 10 million views, and all the comments are like, "Oh, this gets me pumped up in the morning. Oh, this is my motivation for work." You're like, "Oh God, oh man!" Like people just, I don't know. People just don't get it, you know. But
and I think your point is a good one, which is that a filmmaker can't take responsibility for every interpretation of what they do.
I mean, look at Taxi Driver. I mean, literally caused a guy to go out and shoot Ronald Reagan. But anyway.
All right. Well, I actually have to go. And
Sorry.
No, it's quite all right. I've really enjoyed talking to you. I hope this is of some use to you.
All right. Take care, Halpern.
Talk to you later, Juzo.
See you later.